Yoga is an ancient Indian discipline that came from Hindu philosophical traditions. It emphasizes the combination of body and mind, working to unite these forces through spiritual discipline. The yogi is one who has attained the state of freedom, moksha, a transcendent state liberated from the repeating cycle of life, samsara. Perhaps it's because of this dual approach to physical and mental health that yoga has gained so much popularity today. In fact, in neurosurgery spine clinics, we often recommend yoga to improve spine health. As ever at BrainBook, we're curious about the neuroscience. How do yogic practices exert their effects on the brain? Although the positive health impacts of physical exercise have been well documented, we look deeper into how the combination of physical poses, coordinated breathing, and meditative practices affect brain structure and function. This video and its accompanying guest blog are a collaboration with Rachel Lee, a certified yoga instructor based in Toronto. She'll be demonstrating some incredible poses throughout the video. You can find her on Instagram down below in the description. Before we go on, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss out. A recent systematic review identified 11 studies examining the relationship between yoga and the brain, of which the majority included Hatha yoga practitioners. Hatha yoga is a style of yoga that focuses on physical postures, breathing, and meditation in particular. Let's quickly cover some of the brain anatomy that we're going to be talking about. The brain itself is comprised of white and grey matter. Although the brain is ultimately formed of neurons, or nerve cells, different parts of a nerve cell contribute to different structures in the brain. In fact, it's the body part of a neuron that makes up the grey matter of the brain, and the tail part of a neuron, which extends across varying lengths, that makes up the white matter of the brain. If we look at brain structure from the perspective of neuron development, the deeper structures that sit on the inside of the brain are more primitive and tend to be responsible for controlling basic or automatic functions, such as breathing, hunger, and heart rate. As we move more towards the surface of the brain, functional responsibilities of the cortex include motor or movement and sensory coordination, as well as vision and higher order processing skills such as decision making. These structures are principally formed of grey matter and are connected to multiple centers in the brain via white matter. So, back to yoga. The studies that have looked at the effects of yoga on the brain use magnetic resonance imaging to visualize brain anatomy. They found that people who were experienced yoga practitioners showed increased grey matter density, thickness, and volume in the left prefrontal cortex, a motivational system of the brain that's associated with responding to positive emotional stimuli. The comparison groups were matched for similar levels of overall physical activity, suggesting that the structural difference could be attributed to the yoga activity specifically. Across several studies, increases in grey matter volume can be seen in other brain centers associated with attention, decision-making, memory, emotions, vision, and movement coordination. People who don't do yoga don't show any overall or whole brain changes in size or thickness compared with experienced yoga practitioners. The first study looking at this was by Garner and colleagues. They investigated two groups of healthy young adults after a 10-week intervention. One group did Hatha yoga, the other group did sports exercises without any kind of breathing or meditation component. These groups were then compared against a control group who didn't do any exercise for that same period of time. After the intervention, the yoga group showed one change that seemed to be very specific, an increase in grey matter density, whereas the sports group showed the opposite, a decrease in grey matter density. There's one big problem with the study that muddied the waters a bit though. The yoga group began the study with a significantly lower grey matter density baseline compared with the sports and control groups. The authors investigated whether sex, height, socioeconomic and demographic characteristics could explain this difference, but they couldn't find any links. So the authors suggest that there may have been some kind of selection bias in the recruitment process, where the yoga group were individuals that were biased towards selecting yoga as an activity during the intervention. Lower grey matter densities may be associated with greater vulnerability to stress. Therefore, these individuals might have been more likely to select yoga as a stress-reducing exercise. Although it's a little bit far-fetched, the study has an interesting approach. It goes to show how complicated it is to design studies that link causation to an intervention, especially when the intervention is a lifestyle change. Other studies sought to investigate something that we call the dose-response relationship, asking whether the amount of yoga that was practiced increases grey matter volume or density. This was found in a single study where increased grey matter volumes of various brain regions are positively related to both weekly and yearly timescales of yoga practice. The study also used a complicated commonality analysis that let them identify varying aspects of yoga that contributed to region-specific grey matter changes. A combination of posture and meditative components of yoga accounted for grey matter differences in places like the hippocampus, posterior cingulate cortex, primary visual cortex, whilst a combination of meditation and breathing contributed towards grey matter changes in the primary somatosensory cortex and the superior parietal lobe. Overall, this vaguely suggests that yoga poses may affect learning, memory, and visual processing, whilst the meditation and breathing components may play a more dominant role in mediating and integrating sensory functions, including pain, touch, and temperature information. Combined with our understanding of mindful meditation and its ability to protect against depression and stress while strengthening cognitive creativity and efficiency, perhaps yoga holds a similar promise. Only a handful of studies have actually looked at how yoga affects brain function, and this usually involves analysing brain images that are recorded during task-related activities. A popular memory test is the Sternberg Working Memory Task, where the subject is asked to either memorise or ignore certain items presented in a list. Following a short maintenance period, the subject has got to recall the memorized list. One study shows that whilst yoga practitioners do not have a better memory than non-yoga practitioners, they do show significantly less brain activation in the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex during the memorization phase of the Sternberg task. This suggests that yoga may improve cognitive efficiency in learning and memory tasks. Yet another study has looked at differences in emotional reactivity between yoga practitioners and non-practitioners, using functional imaging to quantify or measure how much blood is flowing in the brain. Areas that are more active consume more energy, so blood flow tends to increase with higher levels of cerebral activity. Interestingly, yoga practitioners show decreased activity in the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex in response to viewing emotional images when compared to their non-yoga counterparts. This specific area of the brain plays an important role in regulating negative emotions and has been linked to depressive disorders when this network is overactive. Similar to how studies that show mindfulness meditation can improve emotional processing, yoga might work with overlapping mechanisms that enable an individual to better endure stress and emotional intensity. What we've seen from this current evidence is that we can see potential changes to grey matter structures that might be linked to improved cognitive efficiency and perhaps even cognitive function, depending on the task at hand, of course. In addition, there are some parallels with studies that investigate the effects of meditation on attention and emotional regulation, demonstrating an improved ability to concentrate and mediate negative experiences. Although it's too early to draw any kinds of final conclusions, this is definitely an exciting area of research and becoming much more relevant to our understanding of physical and mental well-being. From our point of view as neurosurgeons, yoga is definitely a fantastic thing to do for spine health. Thanks very much to Rachel for showing us how yoga should be done. Follow her Instagram to learn more, and if you're based in Toronto, go and learn yoga from her. Subscribe to BrainBook and like the video if you found this interesting, and I'll see you in the comments section down below.